Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the sixth episode of Digital Downtime. I know we took a bit of a break. I know we didn't do a single episode in 2024, but I've decided to resume this podcast. I was thinking about doing different names, etc. But we're going to stick to Digital Downtime. Whoever's an OG here for the listeners to the first 5 episodes, I do appreciate it. Think of this as a soft reboot of the podcast itself. I'm glad to be back. Episode 6, 2025, all the way in April. A lot to talk about in the gaming world. So there's no lack of content that we could be discussing, lack of news, whole lot of shit going on in the gaming world right now. We are going to focus today's episode on the Nintendo Switch 2. I know I'm a little late to the party. I know the direct happened a couple of weeks ago, but hey, better late than never. We'll be discussing essentially the biggest question I have for most gamers around the world: will you be purchasing a Switch 2? Now, this can be dependent on a lot of factors: your brand loyalty, tariffs, pricing, quality of games, quality of hardware. These are all topics we will be discussing. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you stay tuned. And right after our new intro, we'll be diving deeper into things. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's start off with the Switch 2 itself and its pricing. The direct happened back on April 2nd. Most people seem to love it. That's what the general consensus is. I know when I watched the direct personally, just looking at what they offered games wise, I was like, okay, hardware looks a little beefier. You get an open world Mario Kart. Donkey Kong Bonanza looks wild, which we'll do a little deeper dive later on in this episode. But then right after the direct ended, Nintendo comes out, hits us with the prices, and Twitter, X, Blue Sky, fuck, probably even Facebook, you name it, went wild. So I did some digging around, looking at some facts. Shout out to the Game Business. If you have not heard or discovered about the Game Business, it's a new platform launched by Christopher Dring, who's been in the gaming industry for a long time, backed up by Jeff Keighley, from the Summer Game Fest Game Awards. Everyone knows fucking Jeff Keighley. Anyways, if you're more interested in getting the gaming side, but from a business perspective, markets, numbers, deeper insight on that end of the things, please check out thegamebusiness.com. You can sign up to their newsletter. Anyways, I know I'm doing a whole promo for them, but I was doing some digging around there, and I've been reading some articles since that direct has happened. And, based on what people analyzed or anticipated, we all thought the price was going to be $399 USD. It ended up coming in at $450 USD. And then in Canada, we got royalty fucked because I think it's $630 here, followed by $700 for the bundle that includes Mario Kart World. And of course, if you're buying a Switch 2, you're not going to buy it without playing Mario Kart World. So it leaves you at $700 Canadian. A little steep. Now, globally, the prices have been arranged for regions and adjusted and whatnot. However, the exception of Japan, where it is cheaper, but it is region locked, because of course, why wouldn't it be, right? So the Switch is cheaper in Japan. I think it's almost like a whole $100 USD cheaper. Correct me if I'm wrong. When you convert the yen to USD. However, it is region locked, so GG's on that. And then immediately after that, pre-orders were anticipated to go as planned. However, pre-orders got canceled because Donald Trump is going crazy with tariffs. And I think before even Donald Trump's he's going crazy with tariffs every day. But I think even before he did that, it's a question of, did Nintendo anticipate or incorporate a previous tariff, pretty much tariff freaking hotcake Oh, are they going to be implemented or not? And their price already, or is Nintendo being greedy, which is always an option, or C, is it both, which it very well might be a combination of both. However, right after the Switch 2 Direct was aired, the U.S. announced a 46% tariff on goods from Vietnam, and ding ding, that's where the Switch 2 is manufactured, and a 24% tariff on Japan, ding ding, where Nintendo Switch 2 cartridges, physical copies are made. So they put the pre-orders on hold because it's possible the prices may rise again. Now, regardless of this, though, Nintendo carries such a strong brand loyalty, and we know this. Nintendo fans are diehard fans. I'm a Nintendo fan, but I'm not a blind faithful fan. But a lot of people are. Um, and what's predicted is still high numbers. I've seen numbers. Some analysts predict that Switch 2 will sell the 4 to 5 million range just in this fiscal year alone in 2025, with it launching in June. Um, Others are predicting 50 million uh, shipments by the end of 2025, possibly even 18 to 20 by June 2026, would have put the Switch at a 2-year mark. And some are even thinking 31 million by the end of 2026. So I mean, the numbers are looking good, but 4 to 5 just in the first couple months to cap off 2025, and up to about 18 to 30 million, which is quite a range after the 2-year marks, kind of just shows how loyal Nintendo fans are. Obviously there's concern about the impact of U.S. tariffs on demand, but you know, Nintendo fans are Nintendo fans. Now, the one thing I will be kind of cautious about here is the Switch 2 ability to match the global lifetime sales of the original. Because I think the Switch 1 is now at 150 million plus global, which is crazy numbers. I think they surpassed the PS2, unless Sony magically rolls out another PS2 sales figure update that they always just magically pull out of their ass and be like, oh, no, no, hold on, no, PS2 is actually 160 million now. So, you know what I mean? All jokes aside, 150 million is a very hard target or very hard achievement to surpass. That remains to be seen, especially with the price point now and also the price point going forward with these tariffs. Crazy. Now, besides the price of the Switch 2 itself, I couldn't do this episode without talking about the price point of the games as well. Nintendo is going forward with a variable pricing model for their games and kind of setting an industry standard of increasing game prices. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people, some of my online gaming buddies, some of my work friends. For those of you that don't know, I work in a bank. And there's two sides of the coin here, right? Obviously, or maybe there's three sides. There's a couple points to be made here. First of all, inflation hits every industry, right? Now, back when I was younger, even in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was starting to get really into gaming, games were still 60, 70, up to $80 then, at least in Canada. I'm talking N64 games, PS1, PS2 games, and that's kind of where the price has remained to date. So has inflation, my apologies. Has inflation really hit gaming that hard? No, more or less no. But should we start incorporating eventually? Yeah. And that's probably what we're seeing here now. But at the same time, gamers aren't used to it, drastically going from like $60 USD to $80 USD. Like, other things, and we see inflation in history, people are people are going to complain about price hikes regardless. But if we saw incremental price hike, I think a former PlayStation executive mentioned this. I forgot the exact name of the individual, but I did read an article the other day where he was saying that, if there's even like a $5 price hike, let's say from the 360 generation to, the PS3 generation to the PS4 generation, another $5 from the to the PS5, or even a PS2 to PS3 to PS4. You know what I'm saying? If there's like just $5 every time, people might bitch and complain, but then they're used to that $5 more for the entire generation. You raise another five, voila, compared to just immediately spiking now. So inflation, I understand. Secondly, the other side of the coin is it could just be a power of greed. Nintendo isn't always the most business consumer friendly, but they're a business at the end of the day, and they're trying to make money, and they know they have that loyalty those Nintendo loyalists out there that they can profit off of and get away with things. So that's also a flip side. Thirdly, gaming, like I said, we mentioned the first point of being inflation. Thirdly, gaming, is getting really expensive. I mean, not us as consumers, we're raising our voices now, but from the others, from the developing side of things, they're really costly. I mean, games are taking longer to make. Before, we used to see developers dish out games every year, 2 years, or publish, big AAA dev teams. Now we're seeing more of like a 5 to 6 year release cycle. They're longer to develop, more costlier to develop. So in return, obviously, they should be asking more for their games, right? Well, what if the game's incomplete? What if the game is super buggy at launch? What if the game is half-assed and they add all their content through Season Pass and charge you for that? Again, back to the argument of greed. However, what if a game launches and it's like Baldur's Gate 3, where it's this mass, huge, epic game? Should consumers be paying more for it? Most likely. Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA 6, which is now, after Nintendo set this precedent, obviously a lot of people were estimating that Rockstar might go with $100 USD for GTA 6, because that's a title that's probably going to be an industry changer in terms of technical prowess, gameplay. You know what I mean? It's Rockstar. I'm the biggest Rockstar dick rider, so you're always going to hear me glaze them. So, if the games put in the amount of effort and love to make it such a high quality finished product, you see the heart and soul actually be putting into the craft of making a video game, sure, maybe variable pricing is applicable. However, if you're going to start charging me $100 USD for a yearly COD, same assets, copy and paste more or less, you get bored after a month, probably not. So there's a lot of factors to consider here, right? Inflation, company greed, the amount of cost and time and development cycle it takes to create video games now. A lot of things to be considered. But what the real head scratcher is with the Nintendo, besides me looking at all perspectives here, is that the physical games are going to be more expensive than digital. However, the physical games don't really hold physical prowess. Like, you still have to download the software, to my understanding. But regardless, physical games will be $10 more. And it's a tough message for consumers, I think. And especially if you look at any retail chains that are left that provides video games. Obviously, we have the GameStops of the world, Walmart's, Best Buys. They're probably thinking, oh man, like, as a brick and mortar business, like, this is kind of fucked up, right? Because why would everyone just get digital? And obviously, it's incentive for gamers to go more digital. And I mean, if you're a PC gamer like I am predominantly, we're kind of used to being digital anyways because we don't have a choice, right? Like, I mean, fucking CD drives and PCs are pretty much non-existent at this point. However, the point remains, physical copies will be $10 more. I don't know. But overall, I think the pricing of both the Switch and the games, the hype kind of died out in minutes, not even hours, right after pricing got announced. That was right after the direct. So we'll see how it feels. I think the software is a bit high. I mean, they haven't even officially announced the game prices in Canada. So if you're telling me that Mario Kart's going to be $80 USD, $90 physical USD, we're probably looking at, just conversion alone, we're probably looking at the game coming at $110, $115. Whew, you know what I mean? That's a little much. But like I said, paid high prices for games back in the day too. And there was one quote here from Nick Aran. He's the managing director of the UK retail chain Game. This is taken from excerpt from the Game Business. He quotes, the games do need to get more expensive. As a retailer, we're selling games for the same price we were selling them 10 years ago, but even their costs are going up. So I didn't even think of this perspective. From a gaming dev perspective, their costs are going up. But as a gaming retailer, as a retail storefront, physical retail storefront, their costs keep going up too. With inflation, leases, rent, etc. And publishing costs are going up also. Bold move to set the precedent, but it needed to happen, right? But he said he was also disappointed that digital games are lower priced than physical. And if we're looking at just euros, I think Mario Kart World has a physical price of 75 euros. The digital price is 67 euros. Donkey Kong Bonanza is listed at 67 euros for the physical, 58.99 for the digital. So as you can see, Nintendo is variably pricing. As of now, Mario Kart World is the most expensive Nintendo Switch 2 game announced because the demand is for it. Donkey Kong Bonanza is a little bit less. However, I think that was the best game revealed. But we'll talk more about Donkey Kong in a bit. So it's a challenge. I mean, Nintendo is predominantly physical, as we know, and it's proud to be physical. And we know families, kids, you take that little cartridge anywhere, you can pop it into a Switch, your friend's house, family's house, etc. Super easy to play. So for them to promote essentially digitally buying games because it's cheaper, and to make it before PlayStation Xbox is bold. And it's gonna be challenging for a lot of retailers, I think, right? And it's a tough message for the customer, right? When there's a difference in prices and they prefer physical, like, I know me, if I'm looking at my wallet, I'm getting the same product and it's $10 cheaper, obviously I'm gonna go with the digital version. But there's a lot of people that like to keep physical copies. A lot of people argue about the game preservation side of things. I get it. So for them, it's gonna put them in a tricky situation. That hopefully this pricing doesn't put too much of effect on physical sales. And most gaming retailers, obviously, physical copies are important to them, and it's important media to a lot of people to have them physical. And you want it to be tangible. You want it to be able to sit on your shelf. You want to be able to collect it, etc. So we'll see how Nintendo's strategy kind of impacts these things. And the cartridge is the same size. And so the same director from this UK retail chain said, to be a cartridge-based format with bigger cartridges required, I get it, I understand it. Just a bold move to make. There's never enough of a new console, he also mentions, but that's what makes it exciting. There will be huge demand. Some of our competitors have gone on sale already and sold out. People are going to have to be quick. So, does the pricing really matter at the end of the day? That's up for debate. I would like to know your guys' thoughts on both the Switch console pricing and the Switch game pricing. I'm sure there's a lot to say about both. Moving on to studios developing for the Switch 2. Video game developers are desperate to get hold of Switch 2 dev kits to capitalize the launch of Nintendo's new machine and hardware. And the scenes from the direct that a lot more third-party developers and publishers will be on board. An excerpt again from the game business said that most of the studios that they spoke to haven't received kits yet, but they're hoping to hear news now that the console announcement has been made. One AA studio who's unnamed felt that their game could have been ready for Switch 2's launch. And they quote, "New console audiences are often willing to try things at the start, so we were desperate to get our hands on our dev kit early. Nintendo has finally responded to us, but I don't think we'll get anything for a few months. So it's a bit concerning." Now, the long question, especially with the Switch hardware being outdated, is do people even play third-party games on Nintendo? Well, there is data that proves it. 60% of all games sold on Nintendo Switch were published by Nintendo, and 9 of the top 10 best-selling Switch games are all Nintendo games, with Minecraft the only outlier. Nintendo's own data also shows the number of million-selling titles published on Switch in a given year. In the 2020 financial year, there were 27 million-selling Switch titles, and Nintendo was responsible for 18 of them. And the broad trend has continued every year since then. Even in the current year, in 2025, for the 9 months ending December 2024, there have been 19 million sellers, and 12 of them were Nintendo games. However, things shifted a bit over the generation. Nintendo has been showing some data around the sale of box games and digital versions of box games, and how third-party games are faring compared to first-party efforts. So there has been an increase of third-party, slowly but surely. Nintendo in 2018, Nintendo published titles accounted for 65% of the games sold on the platform. But for 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024, third-party games have accounted for between 52 and 53%. So in 2018, Nintendo published titles accounted for 65, which means third parties only accounted for 35%. But then in recent years, we're seeing more than half of the sales are now attributed to third party. And plus, with Nintendo's beefier hardware, obviously it's not on the levels of a Series X or a PS5. might let might encourage this trend to continue. So we will see. Um, Clearly, I mean, still on the topic of third party developers. Obviously, the Switch is more challenging than the PlayStation, Xbox, but third parties are increasing their share of the Switch market. We see from the numbers, um, but we should not think that Nintendo Switch 2 can run most third party titles efficiently as a PS5 or again an Xbox Series X would. Um, but it should encourage more of it. And really, most people are buying a Nintendo console because they want to play some of the best titles of all time. They want to play Nintendo games, right? So, but then also, third party games, especially indie games, right? Games like Balatro, the future upcoming Silk Song, stuff like that. People want to play them portably. And that could also encourage more third party sales, especially from an indie perspective, to be on the Switch too, right? So there's a lot of things to consider here regarding third party development and support. But I think we will see that tick rise, right? And to carry on our conversation for third party developers and kind of going into, is Nintendo really trying to take on PlayStation, Xbox? I would say no. It's been a long time since I've considered Nintendo a direct rival to PlayStation or Xbox. Of course, they're competitors because they're all competing in the gaming console space, right? But it's the modern entertainment age. And to be honest, all forms of entertainment are just competing with each other, right? Movies, books, TikToks, streaming services, gaming platforms. They're all competing with each other, right? For people's free time, essentially. Um, but since the Wii, Nintendo has largely avoided targeting traditional gamers, right? More family focused, novelty control schemes, brightly colored games. And I think when the Switch came along, it definitely appealed to the older gamers, such as myself. I'm only 30, but that older Nintendo generation who grew up with the Super Nintendos, the N64s, etc. So their focus kind of pivoted a bit, right? Um, but still not a quite direct competitor to Xbox or PlayStation, right? The most popular franchises on Sony and Microsoft consoles, which are mostly third party, FYI, they're not the exclusives. We're talking about the CODs, the Maddens, the Assassin's Creeds, the FIFAs. They, were either non-existent still on the Switch, or they sucked. Have you ever tried fucking playing FIFA on the Switch? It's awful, right? But in the Switch 2 Direct, we did see that there will be Call of Duty, Madden, EA Sports FC, Final Fantasy, more modern, bigger titles, critically acclaimed titles such as Elden Ring, Cyberpunk, and maybe there will be a GTA 6 version on the Switch too. That remains to be seen. But what I can say confidently from seeing those games in the Switch 2 Direct is that the console is clearly powerful enough to run modern games. Games that have been released in the past couple of years or maybe ever so recently. But it remains to be seen if they can keep up with that as games, as newer releases keep on coming over. Obviously, one of the biggest surprises was Duskbloods, a new hardcore action game developed by From Software, right? Like, where the hell did that come from? And obviously, this game is designed to bring new audiences to the Nintendo ecosystem. And frankly, it's a PlayStation audience, right? Duskbloods almost at first looked like Bloodborne 2 to me until I was like, wait, this might be some co-op adventure game. Whatever, but obviously that's the target they're trying to get into. So, I don't expect, all the From Software fans to trade in their PS5 to Switch 2. Or would, let's say, would a Gran Turismo friend choose Mario Kart over Gran Turismo or Forza Motorsport from Xbox, right? Or would they choose Metroid over Halo or yada, 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 right? Probably not. But as an additional purchase, maybe. Do they want to play Elden? The biggest factor here, again, I'm mentioning with third party and the fact for Nintendo to compete with Xbox and Nintendo, if they even want to in the third party space, is the fact that it's portable. Don't you want to play Elden Ring portably? Sure, buy Steam Deck. However, do you also want to play Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, blah, blah, blah? Yes. But then you can also play Elden Ring on the go. You see what I mean? That's going to be the biggest appeal here. And you give it enough power, bigger screen, etc., it might happen. There's obviously a crossover between PC, PlayStation, Xbox owners, and the Switch. Obviously, if you own a PlayStation or Xbox, it's probably not the only thing you own. You probably have a Switch with it. And if you're a PC owner, most times people are just PC owners, but if they do by chance happen to have a console, it'll most likely be a Switch due to the exclusives. See what I mean? So Nintendo trying to target PlayStation, Xbox owners is a good thing because more likely than not, an owner of either of those consoles most likely will have a PC, or Nintendo as well. So yeah, a main scene. But we will see how the third party development works on Nintendo Switch 2. I think it will be strong for a while compared to the Switch, but as time moves on, right? Because Nintendo has their own release schedules with their consoles and stuff. We'll see how powerful the device remains to be seen for future third party big AAA games, right? So, but regardless, Nintendo will always find success in their first party games because that's their bread and butter. So I wanted to take a section out of this whole episode to talk specifically just about Donkey Kong Bonanza because this game looks fucking nuts, right? Everyone talking about Mario Kart World. Everyone talking about the stupid C button that promotes, this booth Discord and game chat that the Switch 2 will offer. Everyone's talking about a demo that's getting priced because that should be free with the console. This, that. People are talking about Duskbloods. They're talking about Metroid Prime 4. We should all be talking about Donkey Kong Bonanza because holy moly, to close off the show, Nintendo finally makes another 3D Donkey Kong game titled Donkey Kong Bonanza. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is the first 3D Donkey Kong game since Donkey Kong Country back on the N64 when you had to buy the fucking expansion pack, whatever that shit was. Wow, right? And I think them going all in on a Donkey Kong game is really a core strategic focus to develop IPs outside of gaming. Okay? If you look at the Switch console generation, Zelda, Mario Kart, Luigi's Mansion, smaller IPs, Kirby, Pikmin, Fire Emblem, all grew rather significantly, right? And what Nintendo's doing with these IPs is expanding its merchandise business, working with Lego on specialist Lego sets, opening museums and theme parks, running events, taking IP into cinema, such as Super Mario Bros. Movie, right? So if you look at all these IPs and characters that have been getting pushed outside of just gaming, Donkey Kong is the perfect IP that could easily come right behind Mario as your second most popular IP in terms of developing theme parks for movies, etc., right? And Donkey Kong is a brand that's been steadily ramping outside of the games, right? There is a Donkey Kong theme expansion coming to the theme park. He's a prominent role in the Super Mario Bros. Movie. There's rumors that there might even be a standalone Donkey Kong movie now in the pipeline, right? So it makes sense to me. Obviously, from a gaming perspective, Donkey Kong was kind of non-existent on the Switch generation, right? Couple remakes, couple remasters, blah blah blah. Tropical Freeze, just Wii U games re-release. And that's no knock on Tropical Freeze, by the way. The game is fucking fantastic, beautiful 2D platformer, hard as balls. Go play if you haven't yet. But to close out your show with a 3D Donkey Kong game, and I'm just talking about the potential and the business IP of the title. Man, does it look so good, man. Easily the most impressive game, man. There's whole underground maps that connect. You can smash right down. You can smash everything. The color palette is cool. The Donkey Kong looks goofy as hell. The villains look dope. Like it just looks cool, man. Like if there's a game I would want to get the Switch 2 for, it's easily just Donkey Kong Bonanza, right? So Donkey Kong Bonanza on the Switch 2 to me represents Nintendo's full efforts to relaunch Donkey Kong in the video games. The new look, obviously the character looks different from the old models. And what I assume to be full merchandise and media expansions to follow. The theme park, maybe a standalone movie, things like that. They're trying to make fucking Donkey Kong the next one up behind Mario, and I can see them doing it, man. I really can. And, with the game being priced cheaper than Mario Kart World 2 and coming out, I think about a month later after the Switch 2 releases in June, I think it's going to have a good window to really do a bang. And I'm telling you, it's going to work for them. I know it will. And me personally, especially being a Canadian, the Canadian person to Switch 2, obviously for me, it's not looking like something I want to hop onto right away. But again, if I did, it'd be Donkey Kong Bonanza. You know what I mean? If they end up doing a package about Donkey Kong Bonanza, it might be something I consider, right? But like this game is gonna be legit. You know what I mean? So I think it's gonna do crazy, crazy, crazy numbers. Okay. Um, Donkey Kong Bonanza is gonna be that game. Believe me. Okay. Believe me. Um, it's gonna be the success of IPs like Donkey Kong that will define how successful the Switch 2 will be. More than how many units of hardware are sold. Like I said, it's gonna be hard to get to the 150 million units, right? But the success of Donkey Kong, the game sales, right? Software sales, um, if you get the standalone movie, like how it all ripple effects into everything else is what's more important to Nintendo, right? Um, it's gonna help Nintendo to kind of become like a Disney-like entertainment behemoth, as I mentioned earlier. Lego sets, theme parks, movies, live events, museums, alarm clocks, blah 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 blah, right? It's gonna be Nintendo. It's gonna be a game like Donkey Kong. It's not gonna be a game like Metroid Prime 4. Metroid Prime 4 is like gonna be a gamer's game. Someone like I will enjoy. Someone, like people who are listening to this podcast, hardcore gamers are gonna enjoy, right? But the biggest opportunity will be Donkey Kong, right? Like he had a starring role in the 2023 movie, man, and that grossed over what, 1 billion worldwide. New Donkey Kong themed area just opened at Nintendo World. Um, yeah, gaming wise, he hasn't had much of an appearance, as I mentioned, largely missing from the Switch era. So I think they're gonna go all in, man, and this will be great. So that was my little dedicated section to Donkey Kong Bonanza. Donkey Kong deserves it. I always love Donkey Kong. He's my main in Mario Kart. I love Donkey Kong Country back in the Super Nintendo days. I love Tropical Freeze. Um, I'm jealous I probably won't be able to play this game right away. But if things change, let's say that will be the game I want to get the Switch 2 for is Bonanza. So that's going to be all the talk we have for the Switch 2. But stay tuned because we're going to have our last gaming little section here, which I couldn't forget about, right? It was one we started with the very first episode of Digital Downtime. It's coming back. Our segment of where I find some older games or some obscuring games in the section titled "Have You Played This?" So stay tuned. All right, so on this week's edition of "Have You Played This?", I'm going to talk about a game that was pretty popular. Um, I just picked up on Steam the other day because it was on sale, and Steam just added the achievements to it back in January. So I think the achievements were only on Uplay or whatever Ubisoft Connect is what it's called now. I'm talking about Far Cry 3, and the reason I want to talk about Far Cry 3 on this week's Have You Played This is not that because it's a game that's obscure or was underrated or undersold. The game was critically acclaimed, commercially successful. But I think where Ubisoft is now and the reputation of Far Cry, I know some people. I still liked Far Cry 4, but I think 5 and 6 started becoming a decline. Clearly, it's not a franchise or series that is talked about in the highest of lights, like how when the series first started. And I think Far Cry 3 was like peak Far Cry, and I think it was peak Ubisoft in a lot of ways, because listen, we wouldn't be in 3D open worlds without GTA 3, correct? Like without that game, there would be nothing. I understand that, and there's a huge ripple effect going from there, right? We can talk about Elder Scrolls in terms of like RPG open worlds and first persons, right? You know what I mean? But we got to talk about Far Cry and Ubisoft, and I hate to give Ubisoft so much credit, but when Far Cry 3 was released, to put an open world FPS with the quote unquote Ubisoft model, I like to call it, you climb towers, radio towers to unlock the rest of the map. You hunt things to craft upgrades, right? If the upgrades are not just, oh, here's some experience points, blah, blah, blah. No, you actually have to go out the world. You have to hunt. You want more ammunition? Go hunt for it, right? You want to hold more syringes? Go hunt for it, right? You want a bigger holster to hold more guns? Go hunt for it, right? So I think from the crafting system to the looting system to the hunting system to okay, go to everything in this region, climb the tower, have the whole region appear on your map, and then clean up that region. Kind of like the checklist open world gaming, I hate to call it, because I'm kind of getting tired of them now. But the forefather of that, it kind of is Far Cry 3. Because immediately after it, Ubisoft themselves started making open world Assassin's Creed games. Ghost of Tsushima was a big Ubisoft type game. I think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth kind of follows that model, where the open world checklist model. Cyberpunk to some extent. Uh, you know, just a lot of games, right? And besides kind of being impactful in the open world genre, which Far Cry 3 was, um, what can you say about Voss, man? What a wonderful villain. I've only got to play about 2 hours in. I originally played Far Cry 3 on the PS3, loved it. It's back in 2012. 13 years later, I'm like, okay, there's achievements on Steam now. Let's give it another run. And I wanted to play it, back on the PS3, obviously 30 frames. Who knows if it is even hitting 30? What resolution? Obviously, I wanted to play it in unlimited frames, full 1080p, because I'm not my PC's not strong enough to do 1440 or 4K yet. But besides the point, I wanted to have a more visually appealing experience on a PC, and I finally gave in. And like just the opening moments of Voss is so deadly. It's a cool story. It hooks you in right away. And like I said, just the way you progress, right? The 3 skill trees, the hunting, crafting, all that. Being stuck on this island as like a tourist, trying to find all your friends, all that good stuff. I think just from the AIs can be dumb, Ubisoft classic, but challenging. Oh yeah, there's outposts to clear. I completely forgot about the Ubisoft model. Outposts to clear, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's just so many things. Essentially like a progress thon, like, oh, you completed this, okay. Checklist open world gaming. But Far Cry 3 was at the peak of it, and I still find it fun. So I think other, even their own Ubisoft titles haven't matched that same essence of it, because I think the checklist style of open world was newer then, but then also the characters kind of rope you in. And back when I played originally in 2012, I don't know the actor that plays Voss, the main villain of Far Cry 3, is who played Nacho on Better Call Saul. And I recently just watched Better Call Saul with my fiance, and I was like, man, he kind of looks familiar. His voice is kind of familiar. Obviously, he provided the motion cap for Voss too, and the voice acting. So when I heard him now, I was like, oh man, it's him, man. So, wonderful, wonderful voice. Just a wonderful actor, period. Nacho and Better Call Saul is awesome. Just a great actor in general, but his voice acting performance and motion capture performance as Voss, it's really, really good. So I just wanted to highlight Far Cry 3 on this week's segment of Have You Played This? Like I said, if you're not a big Ubisoft person, or the newer Far Cries or Assassin's Creed kind of titles drift you away from Ubisoft, I know their track record has been great. X Defiant, RIP, you know what I mean? Give it a try, right? I would highly, obviously Ubisoft has a lot of great titles. The 360 era as well. Talking about the Graz, the Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighters, Rainbow Six Vegases, etc. Splinter Cell, etc., etc. But I think Far Cry 3 is one of their best games. Trust me. Just if you haven't played it, go play it. Even if you have played it, you can get it super cheap on a sale. There's achievements on Steam now. Check it out, all right? So that is the game I wanted to mention on this week's Have You Played This? So, ladies and gentlemen, that was episode 6 of Digital Downtime. I am sorry for, the year, almost year and a half a hiatus. But we are back in the big 2025, talking about the Nintendo Switch 2. We talked about its pricing, the game pricing, If third-party development and focus will increase, and Donkey Kong Bonanza in focus. And then we also talked about Far Cry 3 and this week's Have You Played This? Leave me your thoughts. Leave me your opinions, things I can do to improve the podcast, whether you agree or disagree with my views, and what we just talked about in general. Will you be buying a Switch 2? Was Donkey Kong Bonanza the most impressive game to you as a Nintendo Switch 2 Direct? Suggestions for the Have You Played This section of the podcast? Any games you would recommend that would ring a bell for my memory, or maybe that I missed historically? Or, have you played Far Cry 3? Do you agree with my assessment of it? Please, please, please leave me your thoughts. And thank you to everyone, whether you're listening to on Spotify, Apple, whatever podcast hosting site of your choice, YouTube. I love you all. I appreciate the support. And like always, we'll see you on next week's episode. I will try my best to make this a weekly podcast. Bear with me. But I do promise you that we will not see another 1.5 year gap. That I can guarantee. So thank you again. You can follow me at This Is Gilly on all social platforms. That is This Is Gilly altogether on all social platforms. Thank you, and see you guys next week.